Hi everybody, Joey here again and welcome back. So in today's video, I'm going to continue on with part 2 of the 3-part series on sumps. I plan to show you how to build the 3 most common types of sumps based on the method of filtration used. When it comes to methods of filtration, I break them down into the state the biological media is actually in, which is either submerged, immerged, or fluidized, meaning the media is below water, above water, or in a fluidized or constantly moving state. I plan to show you a basic layout on how to build one, some tips and ideas for them, how to size them for your aquarium, and then the pros and cons to each method. With that said, last week we talked about the fluidized filter. This week we are moving on to the immerged filter. The most popular type of immerged filter is the wet-dry filter, or the more descriptive name, the trickle filter. Essentially, this works by suspending media over the sump, raining water over that media. Design on these are really simple, but their success really comes down to how good of a drip plate you have. Now, I've shown this method of filtration in other videos using different materials to create it. However, in this video we'll be making it a little easier while making it a little more visually appealing. I use one piece of glass suspended a few inches from the bottom of the tank. The bottom of it should be high enough to be above the pump you're using, so that your pump stays submerged. How much media you need depends on the fish kept and the ammonia produced, but it can be really broken down into exact numbers like I did in my book. However, a good rule of thumb is 10 liters for the average 100-gallon aquarium stocking. The size of the sump should be large enough to accommodate the equipment and additional water that will drain when the power goes out. To figure out how much water will drain from the sump during a power outage, a simple rule of thumb that I use is to take the volume of the water your aquarium is and divide that by the height of your tank. For example, a 24-inch 100-gallon tank would drain around 4 gallons of water. Usually it's less, but this is a good start. Using the 100-gallon tank example, we would use 10 liters of media for it. We also know that around 4 gallons of extra space in the sump will be needed when the power goes out. However, the media remains suspended above the water level when in operation, so that changes things. We no longer need a large sump to accommodate the extra water volume, as the sump will only be filled by about 20% anyways. So typically speaking, if the sump is big enough to fit the media and all of your equipment, it's also going to be big enough to accommodate a power outage. To suspend the media, I use a couple of pieces of glass or acrylic on the inside chamber to rest a piece of lighting diffuser on top of. Then I fill it with media. Now I tend to prefer using bio balls for it, as they tend not to compress or clog as easily as alternative media like plastic pot scrubbies. However, both will basically do the same thing. For a drip plate, you can build one like I've shown in a previous video, or you might luck out and find a small plastic drawer that fits your chamber perfectly. You might even want to find the drawer first like I did. I actually found a drawer with the rough dimensions I needed and then built the chamber to accommodate it, while ensuring the chamber was at least as big as I needed. Then drill holes in it. Holes should be spaced evenly and as many as you can drill. Spacing them by about 1 inch is a good idea. You'll want water to flow evenly through all of them, so start off with small holes and test. If it ever clogs, I also drilled holes in the sides for water to flow out of. Then I simply rested this directly on top of the media and then filled it up with filter floss, which is cheap and easily changed. With the sump size now determined, I also recommend running almost all sumps at around 6 times the volume of the system as a good rule of thumb, meaning that if your main aquarium is 100 gallons, you'll want to run the filter return pump at 600 gallons per hour. Now let's talk about the pros and cons. The pros are simple. It's an ideal environment for aerobic bacteria. It's a highly oxygenated environment that allows the bacteria to perform efficiently. It's able to do this simply due to the fact that the water is constantly raining over the media with highly oxygenated water. These are also typically very quiet as well, and generally the cheapest sump you can make. The cons are what we're really interested in though. This filter can be difficult to create a pre-filter for, as is generally above the water lines, so we have to rely on a drip plate for the delivery of the water. With that said, the efficiency and effectiveness depends entirely on that drip plate. If you don't get it just right, then you can dramatically lose effectiveness. So I guess you could say the drip plate can be finicky to get just right. The second thing is that channeling can happen. This is when there is a buildup of detritus that forms in the media and water simply flows around it. Now, given the fact that water will always travel the path of least resistance, this is important. The more channeling that occurs, the less water that will actually come in contact with the rest of the media, which means that over time it will become less effective if you don't maintain it properly. Which brings me to my next con. Cleaning is needed every few months to around a year. While you won't have to do it that often, when you do, it's a pain. The last con to this filter is that most sumps will add a lot of additional water volume to your system, while this one simply doesn't. With that said, you can always use a larger sump or change up the design, but typically this doesn't do much for the water volume, which is typically a big plus to sumps. So I would recommend this sump for people on a budget that still want some sort of a benefit to a sump while still having a very effective filter. Anyways, I hope that you guys enjoyed part 2 of this series. I also wanted to thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next week when we take a look at the submerged sump.